For more than 100 centuries, the Emperor has sat immobile on the golden throne of Earth. He is the master of mankind. By the might of his inexhaustible armies, a million worlds stand against the dark. Yet he is a rotting carcass, the carrion lord of the Imperium, held in life by marvels from the dark age of technology, and the thousand souls sacrificed each day so he may continue to burn. To be a man in such times is to be one among untold billions. It is to live in the cruelest, most bloody regime imaginable. It is to suffer an eternity of carnage and slaughter. It is to have cries of anguish and sorrow drowned by the thirsting laughter of dark gods. It is a dark and terrible era where you will find little comfort or hope. Forget the power of technology and science. Forget the promise of progress and advancement. Forget any notion of common humanity or compassion. There is no peace among the stars, for in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Welcome to Behind the Screen. I'm your host, JM. This is a show where we sit around and we talk about gaming, we talk about what is interesting and what is beautiful. And that's what we're here. We're talking today about Warhammer 40,000, Wrath and Glory, a game by Cubicle 7. Been on a bit of a Cubicle 7 kick, because I'm still waiting for the sweet, sweet notice of Lost Colony and Maw of Oblivion to come in. And this is what you guys voted on wanting to see on the show. So we're going to do a deep dive into Wrath and Glory. We're going to look at the setting, we're going to look at the supplements, we're going to look at the system, several other S words that I can come up with along the way. But first, good morning to Mark and Grom and Hydro and John and Tink. It is good to see all of you. Had a good week of gaming here at the Iconic Studio. Wednesday, Tink and Hydro were in my 13th Age game. We're play testing a new adventure. Won't say much more about that, but it has been a ton of fun. And then yesterday, we jumped into starting our Hyperborea game on our Wednesday night with Mark and Tink as well as iconic friends Evan and Becca. So that's been a lot of fun. Hopefully I'll have some after action reports to share in the near future. So Wrath and Glory as a game came out first not by Cubicle 7, but by a company, Ulysses Spiel, which I used to stream their games. I actually streamed a game of Wrath and Glory. I'll find the link to that stream on our channel and post it here if I can do that. We still have it. It was a while ago. Mark was able to hang out with us, Morning Padre, and play in that. He played our Space Marine. It was a fun time. It was a fun game. And through various reasons, which we won't go into here, the license for the Wrath and Glory game shifted away from Ulysses to Cubicle 7. And Cubicle 7 had established themselves with the Age of Sigmar Soulbound game, with Warhammer Fantasy, which they've just done a gorgeous job with. So it kind of made sense to bring all of the Games Workshop properties into under one company, under one banner. They kept the system, but it's not so much a second edition, but let's call it a revised edition. So this is the core rulebook. You want the one with the red cover if you're getting into this. I'll put a link in the show notes to where you can buy this in PDF and physical copies. And just so you know, if you use the links to in the show notes, Conic gets a little bit of affiliate reimbursement for that, so you help support the show. I appreciate that. Also, to everybody who subscribed in the last couple of weeks, thank you. We are well over 900 right now, and we are on our way to our thousands, where we're going to give away a complete set of the initial Kickstarter books for Fading Suns, another world that is built on the same premises as 40K. So today, well, the Talisman. So Padre, I don't know if you know, but there is a Talisman role-playing game, and it is done by Pegasus Spiel. We'll talk about that one later, but it does exist. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about Warhammer 40K, because a couple of people in the chat have said they know next to nothing about it. This is going to be our overview of the setting. We'll dig much deeper into the setting in the future. Now, I am very familiar with the 40K lore and universe, but I am not an expert. There are several great channels that you can go do deep dive lores on. There's one gentleman who I follow who, I mean, he's got maybe 60 hours of lore videos and is still putting out new lore videos for 40K. So, 40K came about out of the what I would like to call the punk movement in Britain in the 80s. So this is around the same time we're getting things like Judge Dredd, 2300, Slain, the new crop of UK writers for Marvel Comics are going on, and this Games Workshop puts out this game. I believe it was originally called Rogue Trader. This is a history as JM remembers it, which may not be an accurate history, but as a eternal lover of the ancient Near East, I will invoke the bard and the muses as I tell you this story, which may or may not be as factual as modern audiences may wish. But the first game was very weird. The first Inquisitor was Inspector Obi-Wan Clouseau, a little tongue-in-cheek. The Space Marines were these punk figures, and thank you, Padre. Yeah, it was the first edition, and it became this war game, Warhammer 40,000. And whereas Warhammer Fantasy retained this sort of whimsical look at kind of pushing back against the nihilism that was kind of growing in that time, 40K embraced it. A lot of its humorous, self-referential things get kind of purged from it by about 3rd edition of the war game. We're at now in the 10th edition of the war game. And what we have now is a universe set in actually the 42nd millennium, 40,000 years in our future, where the most brutal and totalitarian government ever conceived by man oppresses millions of worlds. And yet, the universe is so bleak that it's the only thing holding back the tides of the heretic, the alien, and chaos. So, what is the universe of 40K? Well, the universe of 40K starts... There's too much. Let me sum up. Humanity goes to the stars during the this great, what is now called the Dark Age of technology. Humanity goes out into the stars. We found multiple worlds. We leave Earth, and we get embroiled in our own hubris in we have this rise of AI and machines, very similar to the Butlerian Jihad, Dune being one of the main influences, kind of being pulled into the 40K amalgam that is now. And during this time, these warp storms, our universe is sort of coterminous with the universe of the Immaterium. So you have the Materium, where we live, the material world, and the Immaterium, also known as the warp. The warp is heavily influenced by the emotions of the species in the world. And so we find a way to travel through the warp, giving us faster than light travel. But at some point after this AI technology war, the war of men of stone and men of iron, which is one of the neat things about 40K is it's a bunch of broken references and contradictory stories because it's been 40,000 years of history. What we have is generally an agreed upon narrative of history as it's come forward to today. The warp increases, and suddenly humanity is cast adrift, cut off from Terra. At this point, a man arises on Terra. Now, some believe this man has existed since 8000 BC, which humorously means the Emperor of Mankind could never digest milk. But this man appears on... It is Harry Seldon. The Foundation has a lot. So Foundation is a key influence. Dune... Michael Moorcock's Eternal Champion, like Michael Moorcock's view of chaos sort of permeates the Warhammer franchise. And so this man who has lived throughout human history, maybe Alexander the Great, arises on Earth where there are it is a post-apocalyptic Mad Max wasteland, and conquers Earth through the use of superior technology and genetic manipulation of humans into super warriors. And he declares himself the emperor of mankind, and he creates more super warriors. These are called Primarchs. These are genetic gods, slightly below the emperor in power, physical prowess, and fighting ability. Ah, yes, the Thunder Warriors are the first version of the Space Marines, perhaps the prototypes of these Primarchs. But as the warp is clearing, and as the God Emperor of Mankind, or just the Emperor of Mankind at this point, wants to go out and start his Grand Crusades, tragedy strikes. And the Primarchs are stolen from his lab on Earth and scattered throughout the galaxy. Well, he still has some of their genetic material, and so he takes what he's learned with the Thunder Warriors and implants this genetic seed into humans, causing them to mutate and become Space Marines. Now, a Space Marine forms the backbone of the Emperor's Grand Crusade. They start as humans, but through genetic manipulation and augmentation become superhuman warriors. And this Grand Crusade goes out to reclaim all of humanity under the fold and banner of the Emperor of Mankind, fighting off Xenos and those who refuse, Xenos being the term for aliens, and those who refuse to join. And this crusade is led by the Primarchs, which are gradually refound, and the Emperor gifts them with the legions of Space Marines that were created from their genetic material. Now, I'm glossing over a lot of history, because I want to get to Wrath and Glory, but this is our basis for people who don't understand. Yes, the Thunder Warriors were destroyed and replaced by the Space Marines, which leads one to believe that maybe the Emperor planned on destroying and replacing the Space Marines with the Custodes, but that is speculation for another day. The greatest of the Emperor's Primarchs is Horus, and on the eve of the Crusade conquering the world, the Emperor leaves the army, gives the entire crusade over to his war master Horus, and goes back on to Earth for some maybe sketchy projects, things that he doesn't tell anyone about. And that seems to be a reoccurring theme in Warhammer games. As we talked about with the Age of Sigmar, this idea of a grand crusade kind of being hurried on and rushed, leading to imperfections and faults in the people who are out doing the crusading and laying the foundation for their failure. So Horus, kind of feeling abandoned by the Emperor, through a series of events detailed in the 60-plus novel, I think it's up to that now, Horus Heresy books, maybe it's only 30, it's a lot of books, discovers and falls to chaos. So see, the warp isn't empty. It's filled with psychic potential and roiling with the emotions of the living beings in our world. And especially attuned, it seems, to that of humanity. Yes, Khorne. Sometimes the warp coalesces into entities known as demons, but it has coalesced over the 40,000 years of history into 4 great chaos gods. Khorne, the bloody god of violence and war. Slaanesh, the god of pleasure and the arts, birthed, and we'll talk a little bit of this more when we talk about the Eldar, birthed when the Eldar society became so decadent that it created a whole new chaos god, ripped a hole in the Imperium that allowed chaos to pour into our reality, known as the Eye of Terror. Nurgle, Grandfather Nurgle, the kindly chaos god who bestows gifts of disease, plague, and undeath on his chosen. And Tzeentch, the Lord of Change, the Lord of Sorcery, the Lord of Psychic Abilities. And so, he falls to chaos. There is a war in the heavens. The second time there's a war in the heavens. We'll get into that later. And there's this massive battle, a civil war between the loyalist Marines and those that fall to chaos. This war ends up bringing the war directly to the doorstep of Earth, where we discover that the Emperor was trying to find a way to keep to allow humanity to ignore the warp and move through something called the webway portals, which were created by this race of Eldari, the space elves, long ago. But through a series of events, the project gets damaged, and demons just want to pour in and take over Earth. And so eventually, the Emperor goes to fight Horus, slaying Horus, but being mortally wounded in return. And his body is enthroned on the golden throne of Terra, this ancient artifact from the Dark Age of technology, and fed 1,000 souls a day to keep him essentially barely alive. Even barely alive, the Emperor is so potent of a psyker that it allows the navigators, those who navigate ships through the warp, to lock on to Holy Terra and use it as a guide to navigate through the stars. The traitor Marines retreat into the Eye of Terror, where they become Chaos Marines, mutated, bonding with demons. The Primarchs of Chaos ascend to become Demon Lords. And for the next 10,000 years, this is sort of the status quo. Humanity is ruled by two things: their faith in the God Emperor of mankind, and the technology provided by the Mechanicum of Mars, these tech priests who worship technology. They don't understand it anymore. They know that if you press the on rune and anoint the certain gears with oil, that the machine moves. So these are the twin heads of the Aquila, the two-headed eagle of the Imperium. 10,000 years. Nothing has really changed. It's stagnated. Humanity in its millions die and are born each day across the Imperium. Thousands of psychers are sacrificed to the Emperor to keep the Astronomicon beacon lit. Chaos mounts crusades out of the Eye of Terror. Humanity lives in hive worlds or on vast agro worlds, which just provide their bounty and shipping it out through the Empire. And they are protected by the legions of the Imperial Guard, the Adeptus Ministrorum, which is basically a billion-man army spread out throughout the galaxy, and by those Space Marines who remain loyal. So that would be the setting for Wrath and Glory, except for on the last of the Black Crusades that came out of the Eye of Terror, Abaddon was able to destroy a planet that held the last of these pylons that was keeping chaos contained in this Eye of Terror, and a vast rift opened up across known space. So you have the Imperium Sanctus on one side, the side with Terra, which functions pretty much as normal, but the Astronomicon beacon can't cross this great rift. And so you have the Imperium Nihilus on the other side, a third to half of the galaxy cut off from the light of Terra and forced to exist on their own. Warp travel is dangerous. Only a few ships have ever been able to cross the rift to bring support to the Imperium Nihilus. It is sort of a frontier, a Wild West, a place where the Imperium is starting to break down. That is the setting for Wrath and Glory. Whew. Hey, Haley, good to see you. It's true, the Eldar or the Old Ones created the Webway portal, Padre. Again, we have at least the Eldar dwell in it now. If we get to talk about the Eldar and the Necrons, we'll talk about the Old Ones. But this is where we're at. We're in a universe of technology that is not really understood anymore, dwelling in the bones of greatness. Humanity is constantly under the threat of attack from chaos, whether it's Chaos Space Marines or demons or the insidious chaos cults that want to corrupt and defy the Corpse Emperor and bring everything under the ruinous powers of the Dark Gods. We have Xenos aliens that threaten humanity constantly. From the Orcs, which are, again, kind of out of that chunky sci-fi of the late 70s, early 80s. They are space fungus that was bred by the Old Ones for war. They will, once a planet is infected, it almost is never completely free of an orc infestation. You have the Tyranids invading from another galaxy. Imagine H.R. Geiger's Alien, but an entire swarm of them. They want to reduce each planet down only to its biomass. They too have insidious cults. They can infect you much like the alien can, but instead of it bursting from your chest, it slowly rewrites your DNA until you come under the control of the gene stealers. The Eldar still exists. The Eldari, the noble Eldar in my mind, I used to play the Eldari quite a bit during my time as 40k, live on craft worlds. They floated away from these craft worlds, are these massive city ships that have, separated when they knew that the Eldar race was too decadent and they tried to save themselves. You have the Dark Eldar, beings who thrive off the power of pain that they inflict on other people. They are not servants of Slaanesh, but the decadence that befell the Eldar race has never fully left them, and they exist as pirates in the webways, striking out at random and bringing back slaves to their dark city of Komorra. You have the Necrons, a race of semi-intelligent. It's uncertain how much the average warrior has, but basically, like, think Terminators, the endoskeleton of Terminators, the T-100s. All of these ravage humanity, and that's not even to begin to believe that humanity is on the same page. The different aspects of the Imperium are often at odds and at war with each other. The Mechanicum see the Emperor as the embodiment of the Omnissiah, their tech god, whereas the Ecclesiarchy profess that the Emperor is the God Emperor of mankind. The Space Marines believe in the Imperial truth, the Emperor's first law that he laid down, which is a very secular humanist. There is no gods, there are no powers. This is a materialist world. So you have all of that coming together in a setting where all of the normal strictures have broken down. So it's not uncommon in the Gilead system to see Space Marines working with orcs or Eldar against chaos. Inquisitors for the Imperium, putting together strange teams to send them out to deal with threats because they don't know when the next relief is coming from the Imperium. It is very much a enemy of my enemy is my ally, at least until I turn my pistol on him, sort of raucous setting. And so that's my introduction to Warhammer 40k. Trust me, I have left so much out. This is one of the very iconic settings in role-playing games and in war games. It has grown from a very comical, tongue-in-cheek game into the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. 42nd now. They've actually advanced the timeline. It's actually where the term grimdark literature comes from. It comes from the tagline, "In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war." Next time, we're going to talk about what you actually get to do in this, because it sounds like a pretty depressing setting. And to a degree, it is. It has the fatalistic, nihilistic impulses of Call of Cthulhu, where you are heroic because you are standing against the inevitable fall of the Imperium and the victory of mankind, or the victory of the Chaos Gods, with the hopes that maybe mankind can figure out how to pull this all together. It's a lot of little victories pushing forth into hopefully a greater victory, but really a very nihilistic outlook of the future. Yes, Henry Cavill plays 40k, and they are actually, Amazon signed him to be not only the actor, but one of the showrunners, I believe. They're going to do a live-action 40k show with Cavill at the helm with creative control, which means I actually have hope that it's going to be, pretty freaking awesome. Padre, I love the Gene Stealer cults. So there's another weird thing about 40k. Depending on who is in control of 40K within the company, sometimes the toys get taken off the table and put away. The role-playing game seems to have a lot more creative freedom, and it seems like whoever's in charge right now loves all of the toys. So for a while, Gene Stealer cults were no longer canon, and now they back are, or now they are again. The new Gene Stealer cult models look amazing. My son is playing Tyranids, which just are, awesome. The new models are pretty fantastic. Tinkus says, playing devil's advocate, maybe humanity deserves chaos if they became reliant on technology and then lost the ability to understand the inner workings. 40K kind of embraces this idea that we are sort of sitting in the ruins of the greater things that have come before. But unlike Dune, where new things are being innovated, as long as you don't make a machine in the likeness of the mind of a man, 40K innovation is considered heresy. The idea that the Mechanicum have is that everything that has been made, or could be made, has been made, and was made during the era of technology. So innovation of any kind is tantamount to heresy. Finding old technology and bringing it back into use, that is the pious way of the future. Right. Chaos isn't entirely humanocentric in 40K, but because obviously Slaanesh was born from the Eldar. But humanity, maybe it's just its vast presence in the galaxy, trillions of lives. Humanity has a unbalancing effect on chaos. And the idea that there are always more negative emotions in the morass of humanity than positive emotions is why the chaos gods that have manifested are so dark. Yeah, the Netflix writers hated The Witcher. That is a whole nother thing to talk about that we could talk about, but it's just a weird thing. I don't understand. I mean, we're talking about we're on a show where we talk about things that are interesting to us and beautiful to us. I don't understand writing for a show where you don't like the base material. That seems a really bad way to be creative. But anyway, that is our introduction to the world of Warhammer 40,000. If I left out your favorite part, which I didn't do it on purpose. We're going to cover more. We're actually going to focus more on the Gilead system. But as we look at the options that you have to play in Wrath and Glory, we'll talk about the Eldar and the Dark Eldar and the Orcs. When we get to threats, we'll talk about Chaos and the Necrons. So I'm not leaving everything out. I just wanted to do a brief overview that I could get done in about 15 minutes and woefully failed. But I think 30 minutes is okay. Thanks to everyone who has joined us and is joining in the chat. Please leave a comment in the if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this, subscribe to our channel, hit a thumbs up so that the algorithm knows, hey, this is stuff that people are enjoying seeing. If you like what we do, please consider either subscribing here on Twitch or following us at patreon.com/iconic production. That's where our Patreon is. We have a great Discord channel where we talk about everything from behind the screen to minis to Savage Worlds. We talk a lot about Savage Worlds. We love Savage Worlds in the iconic verse, if you will. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I'm JM. This has been Behind the Screen. We'll be back with more Wrath and Glory next week. Until then, have a good one.